Okay, today we get to take notes and learn how to add and subtract fractions with unlike denominators. So we've already been practicing adding and subtracting fractions when the denominators are the same. Do you remember the rule on how to do that? What are you actually adding or subtracting? Which part of the fraction? Yes. The numerator. Do you do anything with the denominator?
No.
No, it'll stay the same, but at the very end, after you have your answer, sometimes you have to do one more thing, which is what?
Round it. Oh, simplify it.
Simplify it. So sometimes when you add or subtract, you end up with a number, say for example 4/8, but then we have to simplify and reduce. When in doubt, reduce it. When in doubt, simplify it. Just go ahead and do it, because chances are I'm going to make you do it anyway. Okay, we've learned how to simplify, we've learned how to reduce. At this point, all of your fraction answers should be in simplest form. Okay, so how do we add and subtract unlike denominators? That means when my fractions have denominators that are different. The first thing that I want to do is convert to have both denominators the same. So in order to do that, do you remember when we learned about least common multiple? Told you it would come in handy at some point. This is where we have to use least common multiple, because we are looking for what we call the least common denominator. It's the same thing. Least common multiple, when we are looking at fractions, is the least common denominator. So we're going to do some practice with this here in just a minute. Then once you have a common denominator, you add or subtract only the numerators. The rule is still the same. You are actually only going to add or subtract the numerators. You're going to keep the denominators the same. Then you may have to, depending on what your answer is, you may have to convert. Convert means to change. You may have to convert to a mixed number if you end up with an improper fraction as your answer, or you may just have to simplify your answer. Okay, so that's the last step. So convert to have both denominators the same. We do that by finding the LCM, least common multiple. Then we add or subtract the numerators. Denominators will stay the same, and then you just simplify. Okay, so let's see what that might look like. Let's look at our first example. It says adding and subtracting unlike fractions, and I have two examples. I have an addition one and I have a subtraction one. My steps are over to the left for me so that I can go back through each one of those as I am working through my problems. Okay, so starting with the addition problem, 2/3 plus 1/2. The first thing I have to do is find a common denominator. Both of my fractions need to have a common denominator. So right now, my denominators are 3 and 2, which means I need to find the LCM between 3 and 2. How do I find LCM? I list out all of my multiples. Multiples are many, so that's where I skip count. So I'm going to go 2, 4, 6, 8. I'll list out my multiples for 3, so y'all skip count by 3s for me.
3, 6, 9, 12.
And out of what I have right here, can I tell that I already have a least common denominator? Least common denominator. What is it?
6.
6. So I'm going to rewrite my fractions so that it is an equivalent fraction, which is why we did all that practice with equivalent fractions. Okay, I'm going to rewrite these fractions so that 6 is now my denominator. So how do I get to my new fraction where I have 6 as a denominator? What do I have to do to get from 3 to 6? What do I multiply by?
2.
2. So if I multiply 3 times 2, where's my pen? There it is. Then I have to do the same thing to the top. Remember, equivalent fractions. We are now creating equivalent fractions. So the same thing to the top means 2 times 2, which is 4. For the next one, 1/2. 2 was my denominator. I need it to become 6. So what do I multiply 2 by? 3. So I do the same thing to the top. So 1 times 3 is 3. So here is my new problem. I have 4/6 plus 3/6 And now I can add them together because my denominators are the same. But do you notice, before I add them, this fraction is equivalent to this fraction. This fraction is equivalent to this fraction. All I've done is rewritten them both so that they're both out of 6 total parts, okay? Now I can add them together. So what am I adding together? My numerators or my denominators or both?
Both.
Only the numerators. Step number 4 right here. Add the numerators only. So what is 4 plus 3? 7. Does the denominator change?
No.
No. Why do you think I have this right here?
So you can simplify.
So that I can simplify it. Because what kind of fraction did I end up with right here? What is this called? An improper fraction. So I'm going to divide it. Remember, the top number falls inside the box. And I divide by the bottom number. So 6 goes into 7 how many whole times? Which is 6, and I have 1 left over. So 1 becomes my whole number. The remainder becomes 1, and the denominator stays the same. So my answer is 1 and 1/6. I'm going to make this look better. So this is my whole number. This remainder here becomes the numerator. The denominator stays the same. Okay, do you see how that pieces together? If that was something you were still struggling with. Okay, now the next one is subtraction. Guys, it's the same exact steps. The only difference is instead of adding, I subtract my numerators. So we get there the same way. We start out by listing my multiples. Again, multiples are many for the 2 denominators that are different right now. So if I have 6 and 2, I want to list out some multiples of 6. So, yep, 6, 12, 18, 24. And then for 2, so counting by 2s, 2, 4, 6, 8. And out of these, I can see already that I have a least common denominator of 6. So that means I'm going to rewrite both of my fractions using 6 as the least common denominator. What do you notice about one of those fractions already?
It's already a 6.
It already is 6. So do I have to do anything to it? No, it's going to stay the same. So I'm just going to bring that 5 over. But the bottom one, 1/2, I got to rewrite that so it's now out of 6 total parts instead of 2 total parts. So I'm going to multiply by 3. And it becomes 3/6. So now I can rewrite my problem. And it looks like this. 5/6 minus 3/6 equals how much? 2/6. Why do you think I have GCF and 2 T-charts there? To simplify it. Okay, so I want to figure out what my GCF of 2 and 6 would be. So I list out my factors for both. And I can see that the GCF is 2. That's what I would reduce 2 and 6 both by if I were to list them all out. You can either do T-charts or you can list them. That's why they're here like this, so that you can do either one, okay? So I'm going to simplify by 2. So I'm going to take my answer, 2/6, that I ended up with, and I'm going to reduce it by 2. So that means I'm going to do 2 divided by 2 to get my new numerator.
1/3.
And then 6 divided by 2 is 3. So my simplified fraction is 1/3. Guys, I'm not expecting you to show me the steps for GCF to reduce. If you know how to reduce it quickly, just reduce it. But it's there to remind you that is how it happens if you end up with bigger numbers that you're not sure how to simplify, but you know it can be, okay? Okay, so that might seem a little confusing. I'm going to show you a video, and then we're going to look at a simplified, broken down version of how to do this, where it might be a little bit easier instead of having it all jumbled up like this, okay? So we're going to watch the video first. Okay, so to simplify down a little bit of what we just took notes on. We are going to use what we call the four square method. We're going to do a lot of practice on this over the next couple days where we break it apart this way, okay? So the first thing that you're going to see is you are going to have the problem in the top left. So whatever problem you're given, that's what goes there. Then you're going to find the least common denominator in the next box over. You will rename or rewrite your equivalent fractions in the bottom left, and then your final answer goes in the bottom right. So it just breaks it apart so it keeps it nice and neat for you and your work isn't getting all jumbled up together. Okay, now this is not one that's in your journal. I'm going to show you one first and then we're going to do one together. Okay, so for example, you have the problem 2/5 plus 3/10. So that would be in your top left box. Remember, you're not writing anything yet. Okay, this is not the problem that's in your journal. The first thing that you'll do in the next box is you will list out all of your common multiples, okay? Or you'll list out all of the multiples for both of your denominators and then look for your common multiples. You're trying to identify the least common of the multiples you listed, okay? Which is what we will use as the least common denominator. So you'll notice here that we have the 5, and we listed all of my multiples for 5. Including 5, 10, and 15. Now, is that all of them? No, there's more. They keep on going. But, hold on. Okay, so these are not all of the multiples for 5. They're just some of them. And then these are just some of the multiples for 10. So again, you don't have all of them listed, but you have enough so that you can find the least common denominator between the two, which is 10. So then, in the next box, what you'll do is you will rename your fractions. So you take your two original fractions that you had, and you're going to rename them so that you have 10 in your denominator spot. So you got to ask yourself, how did I get from 5 to 10? I multiplied by 2. Do the same thing to the top. My new numerator is 4, so this is our equivalent fraction part, okay? So after I rename my fractions to 4/10 and 3/10, I can add them together, and then the bottom right is where my final answer will go that is simplified. So if I need to simplify it, I can use this box to do that. This case, I don't need to. It's just 7/10. Okay, y'all see how that pieces together? It's like a puzzle. Okay, so here is another one. This one still is not the one that you have. It's only one more, and then we're going to do the two together, okay? So we have 8/12 plus 2/4. My common multiple is 12 out of 12 and 4. Again, I'm not listing all of the multiples. I'm just listing enough so that I can see where my least common multiple is. So I'll be using 12 as my least common denominator when I rewrite my equivalent fractions. So in the bottom left, you can see how they got rewritten. Did the first one get changed at all?
No.
Nope, stayed the same. So it's going to be 8/12. I'm going to add it to 6/12. My answer ended up being 14/12, which is what kind of fraction? Improper. So over here, I've got to change that to my simplified or mixed number. So 14/12, I ask myself, how many whole times can 12 go into 14? 1. When I subtract it, what would I have? I would have 2/12. So how did I get 1/6?
Simplify it.
Yeah, so you can't leave it as 1 and 2/12. Even though you did that step and you got 1 and 2/12, you have to still simplify the fraction. So be very careful. Take your time. Don't rush. Make sure you get it in simplest form. All right, here we go. Are you ready? This is your problem. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to list out our multiples for 8 and 6. I'm using my two denominators, and I'm going to list out as many multiples as I can until I think that I've come up with one that they have in common. So I'm going to do 8, 16, 24, 32. Do I have any of these that 6 could also maybe go into?
Yes.
Okay, so let's start listing for 6. 12, 18, 24. There it is. So I will end up using 24 as my least common denominator in a minute when I rewrite them. So moving down to the bottom left box, you don't have what I have here. So you're just going to write your fractions. You're going to write down 4/8. You're going to copy what I have on the board and 2/6 underneath it. Okay, remember my goal is to get a new denominator of 24 for both of these fractions. So I'm going to write a fraction with 24 on the bottom off to the side next to both of those fractions. And I've got to figure out what the numerator is. So this middle part here is telling me what to multiply my original denominator by, 8, times what is 24?
3.
3. So then the top number, 4 times 3 is 12. Well, not yet. Hold on. Now the bottom one is 2, 6. I want to rewrite it out of 24. So 6 times 4 is 24. So the top number, 2 times 4 is 8. So now I use this information to now add my fractions together. So I'm only focusing on 12 plus 8, which is 20 24ths. Okay, now here's where I simplify it because I know it can be simplified. They're both even numbers. So I for sure can simplify them by 2. All even numbers can be divided by 2. Is there another number I could simplify by that would save me an extra step? Not 5, but 4. Okay, so 20 divided by 4 is going to equal 5. And 24 divided by 4 is 6. So 5, 6 would be your simplified final answer. We're going to do the last one real quick. It's subtraction, same steps. So is it this one, 5/9 minus 1/6?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so the first thing I want to do is list out all of my multiples for 9 and 6. Yes, 9, 18, 27, 36, 45, and then we can start listing for 6, 18, 24. I can stop there because I already have my least common denominator, which is 18. Oh, sorry, 12. I was thinking of, I was trying to get to 18. I did skip 12, sorry. Okay, so now I want to rewrite my fractions using 18 as my least common denominator. So over here in my bottom left box, I'm going to write 2 fractions with 18 on the bottom with missing top numbers. I want to make sure that I include my original fraction so that I can see the change happening, so that I can see it going from 5/9 to my new fraction. So what am I multiplying 9 times? Okay, 2. So same thing to the top then. 5 times 2 makes that 10. So 10/18 is equivalent to my original 5/9. Now on the bottom, 6 times 3 is 18. So 1 times 3 is 3. Now this should be minus, not plus, because we're subtracting. So I'm going to subtract this, and 10 minus 3 is 7. 18 is the bottom. So this is what I end up with. Can I simplify that?
Yeah. Wait, no.
No, you cannot. So this is my final answer. So 7/18 will be your final answer. Okay, we're going to do more practice with this on Monday and Tuesday, a lot of it, okay? Go ahead and put your journals up. That is it for today. Whoops.